Hello and welcome back to MetaSounds for the Wise. Today we're going to be continuing the random continuous container by making the delay and sample accurate transitions. So just as a reminder, with the sample accurate transition, the next audio file plays directly after the previous one, and the delay transition type allows for a short delay between audio files. We'll start with the delay transition type. And along the way, we'll see that it allows us to make a sample accurate one as well. I've made a copy of the random trigger continuous container that we made in the last video, and I'll use that as a starting point. We can start off by deleting the trigger repeat node. And since we're playing one file right after the other, we don't need the trigger sequence anymore because there's not any risk of the files overlapping or needing to overlap. So let's delete that. We need to set it up so that the random get is triggered sometime after the wave player has finished playing. Wave players have an output called onFinished, which is sample accurate, and it's triggered once the wave player is done playing. So we could use that, but the problem is that we can't connect it to our random get, directly at least, because it creates a loop and MetaSounds don't like loops. To fix this, we could use a delayed variable, which is created by holding Alt and dragging a variable onto the graph. But instead of using onFinished, we can use onNearlyFinished. And we do this because I think at least that a delayed onNearlyFinished is effectively called when the onFinished output is triggered. So for all intents and purposes, this is the sample accurate transition type that we find in Wwise, or at least it's the closest way that I found of reproducing it. Now that this is set up, we could just put a delay before the random get to create the delay transition type. This means that we don't have to create a separate patch for the sample accurate one because it's just a delay transition with the delay set to 0. So here we have the onPlay input, and after that is our trigger delay or our initial delay. After that, I have the delayed onNearlyFinished, and then a trigger delay to define our delay time. I added a random time node to that, which is also triggered by the onNearlyFinished variable so that the random time resets every time a new sound is played. Let's test it out now. The problem is that even though our initial delay is at 0, there's still a delay applied to our first sound. And in Wwise, there will only be a delay on the first sound if there's an initial delay set up. To fix this, all we have to do is put a trigger any that is called after the initial delay and the onNearlyFinished delay, like this. So after a bit of tidying up, here's the MetaSound, and here's the MetaSound patch. So now we have two patches, the trigger rate one and the delay transition type, which also includes the sample accurate one. But rather than have two patches, we can combine all of this logic into one. To show you what I mean, here's a MetaSound patch that by default is set to the delay transition type. And because the min and max delay values are at 0, that means it's actually set to sample accurate. But we have this Boolean here, this checkbox, that if I check it, I set it to true, then the transition type becomes trigger rate. To show you how this works, I've got some annoying recordings of me counting to 6. And if I play the MetaSound now, it's going to be set to sample accurate.
5, 2, 3, 4, 5.
If I set my min and max time values to 2, then there will be a 2-second delay after each file is done playing.
6, 2, 4.
If I set it to trigger rate and I put the min and max at 0.5, then each file will play after half a second.
1, 5, 4, 4, 2, 2, 6, 6.
And conversely, if I uncheck trigger rate, there'll be half a second delay between each audio file.
3, 2, 5.
So, how does this work? When the patch plays, it does a trigger compare bool, and it says If the trigger rate checkbox is equal to not being checked, then it triggers this variable called delay. And if it's not equal to that, so if it is checked, then it triggers the trigger rate variable. If it triggers the delay variable, well, then we have our delay logic here. And if it triggers the trigger rate variable, then it triggers the trigger rate logic with the trigger sequence, the trigger repeat, and all that business. I've saved some space by having some common variables, so my random time for my delay and my trigger rate is updated using the onPlay variable of my delay wave player and the repeat out from my trigger rate. And the same thing goes for my random pitch and random volume. And here I have the option to do a fade out when we press stop or when we trigger stop. And I have my unfinished that is triggered after the fade out time plus 1/4 of a second just to make sure that it's smooth. And that's about it.